And tonight, new details are emerging in the murder case of Cash App founder Bob Lee. This time, they are related to the suspect, Nima Momeni. And Momeni is accused of stabbing Lee 3 times on April 4th, allegedly after a dispute over Lee's relationship with Momeni's younger sister. And now, public records show that Momeni might have had a history of violence. According to the San Francisco Chronicle, on August 1st of last year, a woman reported that Momeni attacked her. He wasn't arrested or charged back then. And this comes as Momeni appeared in court today for his arraignment, but the whole process was delayed after his lawyer asked for more time to review evidence. We did hear from both defense and prosecutors, though. You might remember that at the center of all of this is a text message from Momeni's sister to Lee the night of the murder. But Momeni's defense attorney says this text message only tells part of the story.
People get to pick and choose what they tell, and people get to pick and choose what they choose to release. Now, in the context of text messages, as a defense lawyer, it wouldn't be the one that I would pick to release, but as a prosecutor, of course, that's the text message that they chose to release.
Meanwhile, the San Francisco district attorney says that she has evidence to prove that Momeni committed the murder.
We do believe that there is video footage connected to this crime, and that we believe that we have sufficient evidence to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that Mr. Momeni murdered Bob Lee.
And joining us now is NBC News correspondent Nyala Charles. Nyala, big delay today. Can you bring us up to speed on why this arraignment was delayed?
Yeah, Gadi. Well, the judge actually delayed the arraignment for another week because Momeni's defense attorney said she didn't receive all of the discovery. She said she was missing some police reports and the autopsy report. But she says next week, when the arraignment is set to happen, Momeni will enter a not guilty plea and she'll be requesting that he be released on bail. But for now, Gadi, he remains in custody where he has been since he was arrested a couple of weeks ago.
And the prosecutors want him held without bail, right? What else did we hear from them?
Right. Prosecutors want him held without bail. That's what they've been saying since his arrest. Listen to what the DA says about that argument. Take a listen.
Somebody that we believe committed murder is an extreme threat to public safety. In this situation, we have an individual who stabbed Mr. Lee multiple times, including in his heart. That is about as dangerous as it gets, and certainly we believe he should be held in custody without bail.
Prosecutors here, Gadi, saying that Bob Lee's murder was planned and deliberate. They're pointing to the use of a kitchen knife as opposed to something they say someone may happen to have on them, like a pocket knife, and also pointing to where Bob Lee was stabbed 3 times, one of those being in the heart. Gadi?
And Nyla, can you talk to us a little bit about this new reporting from the San Francisco Chronicle about Momeni's potential past here? What do we know?
Well, according to the San Francisco Chronicle, according to a police report they obtained, a woman accused Nima Momeni of battery last year. She says that he held her at the waist. However, he was not arrested and he was not charged. And his defense attorney saying that's a non-issue. She says he doesn't have a violent criminal history. But we do know today in court, Gadi, Bob Lee's family was there to see Nima Momeni. More than 20 family members and also friends, including his 2 children. Also, Momeni's family was in court as well, though not the younger sister that's at the center of all of this controversy. Prosecutors, though, saying Bob Lee's family will return back to court next week. Gadi?
Nyla Charles, thanks so much. And today we learned some shocking details from that deadly Sweet 16 shooting in Alabama last weekend. First off, a total of 6 people have now been arrested for the shooting. Police say 5 of them admitted to shooting at the party, and at least 89 shell cases were found at that scene. And those bullets were fired from at least 7 different guns. Most of the suspects appeared in court today for bond hearings. The 6th unnamed suspect is just 15. He did not appear in court, and all have been charged with 4 counts of reckless murder. Now, 4 people died that night at the party, including the birthday girl's older brother. Another 32 people were hurt. Joining us now is NBC News correspondent Gad Venegas. Gad, there are now 6 people accused in this crime, all charged with the same charges. Were they all the gunmen here?
Gadi, today was the first time that authorities shared some of the details of that investigation. As you mentioned, 5 of the 6 suspects have now admitted, according to authorities, to having fired a weapon. Now, we also learned that 2 of the victims that died had perhaps some type of involvement. What we know is that one of the victims that died, this is a Corbin Holston, was found with a gun on top of him. They did say that it was placed on top of him in a very strange way. And then we also know that another one of the victims that died, Marcia Collins, had a gun on him, but that gun was not fired. Also, some of the details shared indicated that the 4 victims that died were near the entrance, and all of those that were involved in the shooting were at the party before that party began. And you mentioned the 6 suspects. So the way authorities handled this, they first arrested the 2 brothers. These were the 2 brothers that are 16 and 17, the McCullough brothers. And then after that, they made the arrest of 3 more individuals, all adults. The final arrest, the 6th individual, is a juvenile who's 15 years old. Now, the 15-year-old is going through a separate process. Today, they had a bond hearing for the 3 adults. Now, cameras were not allowed inside the courtroom during that bond hearing, but members of the media were present to take notes. That's where we got a lot of these new details. And in a separate closed hearing, the judge was going to have the other 2 minors who also had that bond hearing, but that was not open to the media. Now, the judge has 24 to 48 hours to make a decision on that bond hearing for the 5 suspects that have appeared in those hearings so far, Gadi.
And Gad, you've been reporting with the community there, and you've reported about a lot of that frustration with how tight-lipped investigators have been so far. Do we know about the evidence that went into charging decisions, specifically why some minors are being charged as adults?
Well, what we know is, as you mentioned, the 7 guns were used. They recovered 89 shell casings, 4 different calibers. Today, they also said that, by the way, 2 of the guns had what's called a switch. This makes them semi-automatic weapons. That's, of course, illegal. And we also know from authorities that they've recovered 1 handgun that was used in the shooting. That's the evidence that they shared today. Initially, they said they didn't want to share any of the details because of the way they were conducting this investigation. This shooting happened on the 15th, and then the arrests were made the following days. They didn't make all these arrests at once, so authorities had a reason why they wanted to do it this way. First making the arrest of the 2 brothers, and then another individual, and then 2 more, and finally, in the end, they arrested the 15-year-old. So perhaps that's the reason why they wanted to keep a lot of these details away from the public. Gadi.
NBC's Gad Venegas. Thanks so much. And we are watching the situation in a bunch of towns right now that are partially underwater after almost nonstop rain has brought flooding all along the Mississippi River. And if you don't live close, sometimes you just forget how big that Mississippi is. But it is the 4th largest river in the world, over 2,300 miles from Minnesota to Louisiana. And see this part right there in pink? That is how much of the river is under flood watch. And we're starting to see video of just how bad the situation is getting. The water is rushing in fast, and it's a lot higher than normal, which is scary considering you could practically walk across parts of the Mississippi because it was so dry last year. Iowa's Governor Kim Reynolds has declared a disaster for about 10 counties, some of which are seeing the heaviest flooding since 1965, and it is only expected to get worse. Let's bring in NBC's Maggie Vespa. She is in Davenport, Iowa right now. Maggie, those pictures, a lot of them that we just saw, those are also from Davenport. What's happening behind you, and how are people managing?
Yeah, so Gadi, I'll start with what's exactly behind me. This street here is submerged. It's been submerged since this morning, and this is blocks, several blocks from the Mississippi, which is over that direction. You can see also people behind us. There's kind of that big black bin right there. That's sand that's been brought in. That's how many sandbags they're filling in this community. They've been doing this feverishly all day long. And then we also met someone over in the town of Pleasant Valley. It's sort of a suburb of Davenport, about 20 miles from here. It's a low-lying area along the Mississippi. This woman, Meredith Dennis, and her family already having to boat to and from their homes, like commute by canoe, basically. Listen to part of our conversation earlier.
Insurance doesn't cover hotels. It doesn't cover food. It doesn't cover lost contents of your home. It only covers the damage that your house experiences during this flood. So there is a lot of stress. How long are we going to be underwater? In 2019, we were underwater for 3 months, literally boating in and out of our neighborhood for 3 months.
Yeah, a lot of people comparing this to 2019 here in this area. That was a major flood. And again, they stayed at that sort of crest level for multiple weeks. But we got to point this out. Forecasters say up and down the Mississippi, which is North America's longest river. We're talking like Minnesota and the Dakotas down through Louisiana. Researchers and scientists are saying this could be some of the worst flooding a lot of those communities have seen in 20 years. One town in particular, McGregor, Iowa, Gadi, forecasters say this could be their worst flood since 1965. So even for these seasoned communities, this could be, they say, an historic event, Gadi.
I know a lot of people are having their gas shut off, right?
Yeah, actually, it's in Mount Pleasant, where we just talked to that woman. And right after we wrapped up that interview, Meredith Dennis got a robocall from her energy company, basically telling her that her gas would be shut off in a matter of hours. And it's happening really in that community specifically because, again, they are so river adjacent. We're talking about a lot of houses that were built to be on the river. But she looked at her phone, she looked at our crew, and she said, in the 12 years I have lived here, that has never happened. In 2019, it never happened. They have floods pretty regularly. It never happens. And she said there are a lot of people who are elderly in their community who can't really get to a hotel quickly, can't evacuate quickly, and now they're going to sit in their homes with no access to gas, to some of their utilities. So a really striking experience, again, even for these people in the Davenport area who are somewhat used to flooding, Gadi. This is a new level for them.
And flooding is such a slow motion disaster. Is the water level rising or is it starting to go down?
No, it's rising, and it's going to keep rising for several days. And, I know you pointed out that a lot of this has to do with nonstop rainfall. There is a second factor that scientists are pointing to, and this is kind of what's fueling the slow go of this whole thing. It's snowpack in the northern part of Minnesota and then also in North Dakota. There's up to 18 inches in some areas of snowpack. Those areas got slammed this winter with these winter storms. That's all melting pretty rapidly, scientists say. So this is an extreme event, and that is the area that fuels kind of the head of the Mississippi River. And that's why we're seeing this flooding sort of go north to south. So forecasters say right now in parts of Minnesota, further north, basically, they expect the river to crest there later on this week and then hopefully start to go down soon after that, but they're not sure how long it's going to take. In parts of Iowa and Illinois, so a little bit further south, they say the river could keep rising into the weekend, if not into early next week, and then crest. So this is a days-long emergency. It's going to be a long road ahead for the people in these communities. Gadi.
Maggie, it's so striking to see that live shot there where the banks of the Mississippi are basically now a gas station behind you. Maggie, thank you.
Right.
And this morning at 6 a.m., President Biden released a video announcing he is once again running for president.
The question we're facing is whether in the years ahead we have more freedom or less freedom, more rights or fewer. I know what I want the answer to be, and I think you do too. This is not a time to be complacent. That's why I'm running for re-election.
Now, some of that messaging seems very similar to what Biden was saying 4 years ago, but now at 80 years old, he is facing a lot of questions about whether he is too old to do it all over again. If Biden wins a second term, he would be 82 years old at his inauguration and 86 years old at the end of his second term, which might have led to this question from the White House press corps earlier today.
Does the president plan to serve all 8 years?
I'm just not going to get ahead of the president. That's something for him to decide. I'm just not going to get ahead of it. And there's a 2024 campaign. Anything related to that, I would refer you to that.
Now, a little bit after that, the White House clarified, saying that the president would plan on serving his full term. But the lack of clarity could be stemming from this harsh reality. According to a recent poll, 70% of Americans don't want him to run again. And joining us now is NBC's Mike Mimley. Mike, the announcement here, not exactly a surprise. What's the game plan now for his campaign?
Well, I think just in this first day of the Biden re-election campaign, you see how the Biden campaign views the issue landscape for 2024. In the announcement video this morning, you see, just like in 2020, the idea of a battle for the soul of the nation. In 2020, it was just Trump. Now it's Trump and MAGA Republicans more broadly that the Biden campaign is framing as a threat to our very freedoms, as it was put in that announcement. Then you see what the president did in public today. He spoke to a union audience, really trying to sell the economic accomplishments rights. The Biden team thinks the president has a strong economic record to run on. He's going to be talking about all those legislative wins and arguing that it's Democrats and his administration that's been working on behalf of the middle class. And then this evening, we see Vice President Harris, who featured prominently, it should be noted, in that announcement video, holding a rally here in Washington on reproductive rights. The Biden team thinks that this battle over abortion rights in the future, what the consequences of Roe versus Wade being overturned, is going to be an even bigger issue in 2024 than we saw in the 22 midterms. So this is all adding up to how the Biden campaign sees a path to victory in 2024. But obviously, there's some really tough poll numbers to get over, right, Gadi?
I mean, yeah, his approval rating right now is 41%. A whopping 70% of Americans don't seem to want to see him run again. What's the plan to tackle that?
Not just 70% of all Americans, but even a majority of Democrats. That's really looks like a big flashing red warning sign for the Biden team. But as I talk to Biden advisors, they really repeat over and over again that those are abstract poll numbers from a pollster to a person answering their phone at home. If you get into the voting booth, it's a much different calculation. And you hear this from any time an incumbent is running for re-election, that this is going to be a choice between two parties, not just a referendum on the incumbent. So voters may not like the idea of an 82-year-old president, but if it's that person against Donald Trump or somebody like Donald Trump, the Biden campaign thinks they have really a good fighting chance. But one thing we didn't see in the 2020 race, which could be a factor in 2024, given those poll numbers, is a strong third-party candidate. Gary Johnson, when he ran in 2016, got just 2-3% of the vote in a lot of states. That was enough to swing the election to Trump. So that's a factor that the Biden team needs to be worried about as well.
Another factor is the technological advances that we've just recently seen. 2024 is going to be the first election in this AI era, if you will. We've already started to see possibly what that could mean. I know the RNC is already out with an attack ad that seems to have some AI, right?
Yeah, it really is interesting because all the Republican candidates who already announced had their own reactions to Biden's announcement today. But the RNC took a really interesting approach, not necessarily talking about the way things are, but an AI-generated vision of the future. Take a listen.
This just in, we can now call the 2024 presidential race for Joe Biden.
My fellow Americans.
This morning, an emboldened China invades Taiwan.
Financial markets are in free fall as 500 regional banks have shuttered their doors.
Border agents were overrun by a surge of 80,000 illegals yesterday evening.
Officials closed the city of San Francisco this morning, citing the escalating crime and fentanyl crisis. Who's in charge here? It feels like the train is coming off the tracks.
Now, Gadi, it should be noted the DNC says they're also experimenting with some of this AI technology, but really just for writing emails to supporters, not generating false images of a reality that isn't quite what we're seeing today.
What a wild world. Mike Mimley, thanks so much.
Thanks, Gadi.
And still ahead this hour, after several failed attempts, is this ceasefire that we're seeing in Sudan actually holding? Plus, Barbie can do and be anything, and now so many kids with Down syndrome can see themselves in a brand new doll. That's just ahead. So stay tuned. And let's head now around the world in 80 seconds. Tonight, we're going to start in Japan, where a company in Tokyo is trying to do something no other private business has ever done before, land on the moon, but things did not go according to plan.
Our simulation might have lost its connection with the MCC. No reason for concern yet.
We secured the communication until very end of the landing. However, after then, we lost the communication.
In Israel, tens of thousands packed the streets on the 75th anniversary of the nation's founding. The celebrations, though, were overshadowed by controversy over Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and his government, which has cracked open some of the country's deepest divisions since the foundation of the country back in 1948. And Cuba is experiencing a nationwide gas shortage. It is so bad that the country is cutting back on everyday activities. Concerts have been canceled. Some university classes have also had to move online. And experts are blaming the shortage on refinery problems, and those refineries were built more than 60 years ago. And in Australia, an American woman was arrested at the airport for having a 24-karat gold-plated gun in her luggage. Officials say she didn't have a permit to import or possess the gun in Australia, which has some of the strictest gun laws in the world. If convicted, the woman, who hasn't been identified, could face up to 10 years in prison. In Sudan, a second American has died in a conflict that is looking more and more like a civil war. The State Department confirms that a professor from the University of Khartoum was killed today. Meanwhile, evacuations continue amid a temporary ceasefire that at best is being partially observed. Both sides, Sudan's official military and a paramilitary group, accuse the other of breaking that agreement. And today, the State Department addressed the thousands of Americans who still remain trapped in the fighting.
It is not standard practice for the U.S. to send U.S. military into war zones to extract U.S. citizens. We're continuing to be engaged with private American citizens and ensuring that they can take appropriate steps to get to safety, to depart the country should they choose to do so, but by and large, doing what we can to keep them safe as well.
And listen to this. There are new concerns in Sudan tonight. It appears that fighters have taken control of a lab that contains biological material. NBC's Courtney Cubie has more.
Officials from the World Health Organization sounded an alarm Tuesday after fighters in Sudan seized control of the nation's public health laboratory. Now, the lab has samples of things like polio and measles. It's not really clear which side is actually in control of the lab now, but they did kick out the technicians, those experts that work in the lab, concerning officials at the WHO and here in Washington who are worried that it could lead to some sort of an outbreak. Now, it's not just the fact that there aren't technicians there, experts who know how to handle these sorts of diseases, but the fact that there is so much volatility right now in Sudan. There's concern that if, in fact, the lab were to be in the middle of some sort of fighting, there's no one there who would know how to control any kind of a possible contamination. Now, this comes as the Sudan is in the midst of yet another ceasefire. Both sides have agreed to it in this case, but there's already some reports of some sporadic fighting, gunfire around Khartoum on day 2 of this 72-hour ceasefire. The hope, though, is that it will hold and allow for more evacuations of both civilians and more government officials from other nations, people who have been trying to get out of Khartoum since the violence started now almost 2 weeks ago. But if the violence does continue like this, it only makes those evacuation missions all the more concerning. Now, the U.S. has, yesterday, they put up some drones, U.S. military drones, over a convoy, a United Nations convoy that made its way from Khartoum to Port Sudan, a 15-hour journey that actually took so long they had to stop overnight and rest. That convoy that included a handful of U.S. citizens successfully, safely made it to Port Sudan. And now the U.S. military is considering helping some other convoys going forward to make that safe evacuation. Now, in addition to that, the U.S. military has one U.S. Navy ship, a destroyer, the USS Truxtun, off the coast of Port Sudan in the Red Sea, and they're moving a second ship, the USS Puller, into the area. The Puller has the ability to board a large number of civilians if, in fact, there has to be a larger evacuation of civilians or even a large number of government personnel in the coming days. Gadi?
Courtney, thanks so much. And coming up, how many times can you listen to a song without getting sick of it? Well, jurors in a big civil case here in New York are going to have to listen to Marvin Gaye and Ed Sheeran on repeat. We're going to explain what's going on in that lawsuit. But first, you got to see this. There is something pretty amusing about what's going on here. This is a hungry moose visiting an Alaska movie theater last week and even having some snacks before leaving. Security video shows the moose approaching the concessions counter and getting a whiff of that popcorn. He just had to take a bite. Sounds like a harmless little mistake to me. We'll be right back. And welcome back. Let's get you caught up in 30 seconds. The man accused of fatally stabbing Cash App founder Bob Lee was in court today. The arraignment for Nima Momeni is delayed until next week. And parts of Iowa along the Mississippi River are underwater tonight. A handful of counties there are under a disaster declaration, and some neighborhoods are even having their gas shut off. And after months of speculation and a bunch of not-so-subtle hints, President Biden is officially a 2024 presidential candidate. Meanwhile, Ed Sheeran was in court to defend himself in a copyright trial. The British singer is being accused of intentionally infringing on Marvin Gaye's 1973 hit, Let's Get It On. NBC legal analyst Danny Savalos joins us now. Danny, first off, just listening to those two, what's your reaction?
I think they sound similar, but who cares what I think? Because all of these cases, and I'm a huge fan and watcher of these high-profile copyright cases involving allegedly stolen songs. Everything from George Harrison allegedly stealing from the Chiffons to Led Zeppelin allegedly stealing from Taurus. You can look all these up on YouTube. They're pretty cool to listen to. But really, I could tell you about copyright law. All that stuff goes right out the window because when it comes to jury deliberations, it's going to be 12 or 6 or however many people are in there deciding whether or not they think a particular song sounds like another. I mean, I can tell you that of the 4 chords in the verse, 3 of them are identical. The second chord is not identical, but according to music theory, it is basically interchangeable. Now, does that make them the same on the sheet music? Because that's what we're looking at. Not the performance, not the arrangement, not the way it sounds when you play those 2 songs, but we're looking at sheet music. That's the true copyright comparison here.
And Danny, I know that there was a video that was played in court today showing Ed Sheeran doing a mashup of sorts between the 2 songs. How's it looking for him right now?
You know, I think too much is being made of that mashup. I mean, I might even argue that it's not even admissible because what you have ultimately, it's almost conceded that there's a similar chord structure. But look, not everybody owns a pretty basic 4-chord progression, and especially if the second chord isn't identical. Yes, the tempo's identical. Yes, there are parts of it that are identical. The bass line is identical, but the melody, which is something a lot of people care about, the part that's sung, those notes are actually quite different. Does that matter if the rest of the song is so similar? Here's another difference. They're in different keys, but by only a half step. You transpose that down 1/2 step, and boy, do these songs sound similar. But if you do transpose it down 1 step to another key, is it the same song? No. See, here's the thing. Your head will spin, and the plaintiffs and the defendants will call music experts in lofty music theory that's way beyond the ken of the average juror. And really, ultimately, it's just going to come down to what each individual juror, how they perceive it. The same way everyone is their own art critic, so too is everybody their own music critic.
And Danny, I know you're a student of all of this. So as the scoreboard stands, the artists that are bringing these suits, I mean, does it usually go their way, or are these tough cases to prove?
Again, every single song is different, and so too is every comparison between 2 different songs. I can tell you that in one of the highest profile cases ever involving George Harrison, I believe, lost. But I don't think that tells us anything about this particular case. I mean, if you're the defendant, you're arguing that here you have a 4-chord progression that could be common. And in addition, the chorus is very different from Marvin Gaye's song. Marvin Gaye just keeps using the same 4 chords over and over again for both the verse and the chorus. And by the way, for those of you out there who are starting to think, hey, this is too much music theory, then you're just like the jurors. They're going to get a little bored as the parties get way into the weeds with their experts on tonic chords and progressions and circle of fifths and all this other stuff that weeded me out of piano lessons after about 2 or 3 months. So all of this stuff is going to be highly complex. They're really just going to do what you and I do, is play it, listen to it, and decide, do I think that's the same?
Danny, I think we're very different here. Like, you keep talking, and I keep thinking, is Danny a musician? Like, do you play instruments?
I'm a hack. I do piano, harmonica, and the triangle. Remember the triangle? Ding, ding. I do that.
Only piano, only harmonica, and the triangle, huh?
Ding.
Oh, Danny, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you.
And another trial investigating former President Trump started today in Manhattan. This one, writer E. Jean Carroll is suing Trump for allegedly raping her in a department store in the 1990s. Now, Trump denied those claims, called them, quote, a con job and a hoax and a complete scam. In return, she sued him for defamation. Here with more is NBC's correspondent Ron Allen.
Hey there, Gadi. Yes, we've gotten through opening arguments, and as you might expect, both sides offer a different version of the truth. Carroll's attorneys began by admitting that she doesn't remember exactly when this happened, the year, the month, the day, but they insist that she remembers the details of what is described as a brutal attack. They met at a Bergdorf Goodman, a high-end department store here in New York City. She says that Trump asked her to help him buy a gift for a friend. They end up in the lingerie department, where she says he asked her to try something on. Pushes her into the dressing room somehow, and that's where she says that the attack happened, that she was raped. She didn't tell police. She didn't tell anyone publicly about this back then, she says, because she feared that she wouldn't be believed, and she feared that Donald Trump would destroy her. Fast forward to 2017, 2019, the Me Too movement, she decides to write a book, and when that book comes out, excerpts of it, that's when she says Donald Trump lashed out at her, saying it was a hoax, a con job, and that's where that often repeated line came out where he says that she was not his type. Carol's lawyer said that they'd hear from, that they would present a couple of witnesses, friends of hers, who she told about the attack, the alleged attack when it happened, and there'd be at least 2 other women who claim that Trump attacked them in similar ways, one on an airplane back in 1979. Carol's lawyer saying Donald Trump sexually assaulted Miss Carol, and years later, when she came forward to tell the truth, he defamed her. Now, for their part, the defense told a very different story and started by saying to the jury to please put their personal feelings aside about Donald Trump and to focus on that at the ballot box, perhaps, but not in a court of law. The defense claiming that Carol made up the entire story to make money, to hurt Trump politically, and to raise her own profile. They said that the story is simply unbelievable and that it never happened. Carol didn't report this to police, they point out. They say that, for example, in this department store during the middle of the day, no one saw them, no one heard a scream. Things that the defense claims make this whole story just unbelievable. Again, it is a civil case in federal court. Carol is seeking unspecified monetary damages, probably in the millions and millions of dollars. The judge has said that the trial should take anywhere from 5 to 10 days.
And here are some of the other headlines we're watching tonight. In Florida, protesters shouting drag is not a crime. Hundreds of drag queens from across the state gathered for what they called a Queen's March at the state capitol today, and they were protesting the Republican-backed bill that would punish businesses that allow children to attend any adult live performance that the bill deems to be shameful. The bill does not specify drag shows, but the language appears to target them. And the governor in North Dakota has signed one of the nation's strictest abortion bans into law, banning abortion at 6 weeks. That's too early for most women to know that they are pregnant. That law was enacted yesterday. The College Board is now saying that they will make changes to its new African American AP Studies course, and this comes after the agency faced a lot of criticism for removing several topics from that course. It still remains unclear what the changes are and when they're going to be made public. And the U.S. now confirms that the ISIS mastermind behind that deadly Kabul airport attack back in 2021 has now been killed. 13 U.S. service members were killed in that attack. The operative, whose name was not provided, was killed by the Taliban in Afghanistan earlier this month. And in Washington, D.C. today, the defense wrapped up in the closing arguments in the January 6th Proud Boys trial. Proud Boys leader Enrique Tarrio and 4 others were charged with seditious conspiracy for their role in the January 6th riot. Today, Tarrio's lawyer placed the blame squarely on the former president, President Trump, saying that he motivated the attack. And how long would you want to live? It is a question that some of us think a lot about, but some of us think about it a lot more than others. One man is using his life as a science experiment to see just how long he can live. And we're not talking about just making 100. We're talking about like 140, 150, 160. Our latest Stay Tuned Now original report takes you there. He calls himself the world's most measured human. And if you ask him how old he is, well, here's how he explains it.
So we can say my left ear is 64.
Okay.
So I have hearing damage because as a child. My diaphragm strength is age 18. My lung capacity is age 18. My heart is about a dozen different ages, different features of it, but it's collectively about 37.
For those of us keeping track the old-fashioned way, he's 45, but he might not be aging like the rest of us because he is doing everything he can to try to slow down growing old.
It's an open science experiment.
What's the end goal?
To demonstrate that we can dramatically slow the rate of aging and reverse the aging that has happened. If we didn't have decay and decline as a assumption that happened, what if it would change everything about being human?
And if that sounds expensive, it is. But 10 years ago, Johnson sold his company Braintree Venmo to PayPal for $800 million. And now he spends about $2 million each year trying to reverse the aging of his body.
We set a world record reversing my epigenetic age by 5.1 years in 7 months.
He says he does it by sticking to a strict regimen he calls Blueprint. And that protocol covers everything from vegan meals like this.
Over a month, I eat about 70 pounds of vegetables.
To a whole bunch of supplements.
I drink this and I take 52 pills.
52 pills in the morning?
Yes, upon waking.
Wow. And a workout routine designed by his teenage son who he competes with. Johnson's body fat now down to 5%. And around his house, everything money can buy to slow down aging.
We're trying to achieve skin quality like an 18-year-old.
And with all due respect, right now, when people see it, they're like, oh, there's a rich guy doing it. Sure. And this costs millions and millions of dollars. You have a team of some 30 doctors. How far away are we from having society, from anyone having access to these types of therapies?
My primary objective with Blueprint is not to solve the accessibility problem globally. The objective in the earliest stages is to show something's feasible.
Dr. Nir Barzilai is the director of the Einstein Institute of Aging Research at the Albert Einstein College of Medicine in New York. And he agrees that aging doesn't have to be synonymous with disease and decline.
It's the aging that drives the disease. And it's an important concept because if we stop the aging, we stop the disease. And I'm not talking about one disease. I'm talking about all diseases of aging, or most of them, certainly cardiovascular and cancer and cognitive decline and mortality.
Meanwhile, Johnson says he'll keep searching for that 21st century fountain of youth.
I don't have a fear of death. I have a love of life. I mean, how lucky are we that we exist? So why not make the best of it?
Wild, right? Before we go, she is a doctor, she's a ballerina, she's a yoga instructor, she's white, she's black, she's Latina, she's in a wheelchair. When it comes to representation, Barbie has come a long way since 1959, and now kids with Down syndrome can feel represented too. She is the doll that can do anything and nothing can hold her back. Mattel just released a new Barbie with Down syndrome, and all with input from medical professionals who actually helped design that fashion doll. That's her right there. She's got the physical features that a lot of people with Down syndrome have, and we are lucky enough to be joined by the president and CEO of the National Down Syndrome Society, Candy Pickard, who helped with that design, and Sophia Sanchez, a model and actress. Candy, your organization played a role in making this Barbie come to life. Thank you guys so much for being here. I want to talk all about this Barbie. So Candy, starting with you, tell me what went into the designing.
So it's really exciting. About a year ago, Mattel reached out to us and told us they were creating the first Barbie with Down syndrome. And as you can imagine, we were thrilled. Our team joined strategy calls, design calls, everything from the beginning of the process. What's really exciting is at NDSS, we put people with Down syndrome first and foremost in everything that we do. And we had two individuals with Down syndrome, our colleagues Charlotte and Kayla, who are women with Down syndrome that were part of every single call and every single process up until today.
And Sophia, I understand you are one of the lucky ones that actually has this doll, right?
Yes.
When you look at this doll, what do you see?
When I see when Barbie says when you have a first can respond as Barbie, because I was like, I'm so excited when my body was feeling happy for this beautiful doll. I was like going wild, but but I was trying to be good for myself for this new Barbie with Down syndrome, because she looks like me and I'm so excited to see her.
That is the most beautiful Barbie I've ever seen, but I don't know if that Barbie is as beautiful as you. Do you see yourself in that doll a little bit?
Yeah, because we're more like each other, because we still look the same, but we have different hairstyles.
Different hairstyles. And from what I understand there are a lot of different versions of this Barbie, right? Tell me, what are you hoping other girls see when they see that doll?
When the girls see that, they have to get excited for it. When they were trying to, playing with it, you actually can have fun with it. Maybe you can have some, for more time, energetic things be happening to the kids. One who wants to play with it, that means a good special touch.
And one of the things I noticed about this doll is if you look very closely, the doll has a necklace, and that necklace has 3 arrows, right?
Yes.
What do those arrows mean?
So there was a group of moms in California that created this design, and it's the 3rd copy of the 21st chromosome, and we call it the lucky few. And so it's a play off of the 3rd copy of the 21st chromosome. But what it is, it's a symbol of community, and it's a symbol of what brings all of us as parents and as people who love people with Down syndrome together. And so many people have the tattoo across the country, so it's very exciting to have that represented.
The lucky few. The lucky few. And we are lucky to have you guys with us. So thank you guys so very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Sophia. And Candy and Sophia, thanks so much for stopping by. Thanks for your time tonight. All right, and there has been a lot of talk these days about whether or not we are entering a recession. But tonight, we're not talking about the normal recession. We are talking about a so-called friendship recession. For years, adult friendships have been on the decline. And in America, men have been hit especially hard by this. 15% say they have no close friends at all. So I spoke with some bromance experts on how to keep the love alive, and here's what they had to say.
Matt Ritter and Aaron Cairo call themselves champions of friendship. Hey! Friends for over 35 years, the two, along with 7 others, gather every fall over a steak dinner and take a vote. Who had the best year? And the winner is crowned Man of the Year and gets a big old trophy.
What do people think when you tell them about the trophy?
I'd say their first reaction is, I wish I had something like that.
It's a physical manifestation of friendship ensconced in silver and wood.
We always say it's not really about the physical trophy. It's just about something bringing us together 365 days a year.
But theirs is an unusual connection. For years, adult friendships have been on the decline, resulting in a so-called friendship recession. And while women haven't completely escaped the trend, the problem seems to be hitting adult men particularly hard. According to a recent survey, 15% of American men say they have no close friends, and 50% say they have 3 or fewer friends outside of family members.
Guys have been taught to prioritize career and family, and then they get to our age and they're like, oh, wait, I haven't talked to my friends in 10 years. And the wives are like, get out of the house.
That's why Cairo and Ritter started the Man of the Year podcast.
Welcome to Man of the Year.
Using their own experiences to help others make and keep friends.
I think we've forgotten how much we need that human connection, especially in the past years of the pandemic. We need that human connection as much as we need, money and exercise and everything else.
Friendship, as it turns out, can be good for your health, with the Harvard study showing loneliness can be as bad for you as smoking or excessive alcohol use. The same study found close relationships keep people happy and have a larger effect on mood over time, more than money or financial success. And if you're looking to make new friends, step outside.
Oh! We tell people to find your third place, which is your home is your first place, work is the second place, the third place is any place that people socialize besides those. So place of worship, bar, Topgolf.
In the spring, when the weather gets nice, that's what we call friendship cuffing season. There's a lot more activities, things to do. You want to go out and be social, so you need friends to go do that with.
Cairo and Ritter say the thing to remember:
be the ball.
Be the friend.
Well, we always say be the friend as opposed to waiting for someone else to be the friend to you. I got these tickets, this is where I'm going, and this is what we're happening.
The best equation for a friendship is simple.
2 words.
Showing up.
Yeah, you just got to show up for your friends on the good times, the birthdays, the bad times, the illnesses. It's actually not that complicated or difficult.
We want to just help you a little bit. You just need to do a tiny bit more. The effort is low and the rewards are super high. I love you, buddy.
I love you too.
And time now for some of the stories to watch out for tomorrow. We're going to continue to keep an eye on the severe weather and the flood threats along the Mississippi River. And we are keeping an eye on former Arkansas Governor Asa Hutchinson, who's expected to announce his run for president in 2024. Plus, we will be watching that Ed Sheeran copyright trial. But for now, that does it for us tonight. I'm Gadi Schwartz, and we'll see you tomorrow. Until then, stay tuned now.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.